Hi, welcome back to my garden. I'm filming a little later in the day because I finished a piece this morning, posted a very short clip on YouTube amongst other places of the piece, a sort of can you guess the inspiration. But having finished a piece, I usually don't start something the very same day. I prefer to think about it and consider my options. Now, if you did see that short clip, I'll give you the answer. It's a reworking of a piece entitled, woodcut originally, entitled Rhinoceros, by the very famous 16th century, early 16th century German artist Albrecht Dürer. And Dürer made this woodcut based on things he'd heard about the mysterious beast, some considered actually imaginary, rhinoceros. Apparently, they had been seen in Europe. One of them had been given as a gift. And Dürer made the woodcut based on a written description. Sadly, the rhinoceros in question was sent by King Manuel, Portugal, to the Pope, and it died in a shipwreck. And not much was seen of rhinoceroses, rhinoceri. There were no sightings of a rhinoceros for some centuries after that, not until really the 18th century. A few words on that in due course. But Dürer's made this famous print of a rhinoceros and woodcut, and I did a sort of reworking of it as the first piece in a series which I'm going to call, its working title, suitably pompous or pretentious as befitting my style, The Rhinoceros in Art and Literature, no less. Well, I say no less, that's not part of the title. And I've been drawn to making sculptures of rhinoceros for some time. I've made a few before. They've actually been quite good sellers, as have elephants. Indeed, my brother suggested to me, well, why don't you go for the big five? And indeed, I have thought about that. Our grounds are big enough. A sort of sculptural safari, elephants, rhinoceros, water buffalo, lions, leopards, dotted all over the grounds. I think that could be quite a sight. But I want to make art that somehow connects with one of my sort of working methods, my creative practice, which is very much to link things with art history. Hence the title, The Rhinoceros in Art. The first really well-known depiction of a rhinoceros was Dürer's. And as I say, that no one had a sighting of a rhinoceros for a couple of centuries. Eventually, a Dutch sea captain brought over an Indian rhinoceros, fantastically named Clara. This was in the mid-1700s. And the rhinoceros started to once again come into vogue. Probably the most famous is a engraving for a book of anatomical drawings, which features a human skeleton with a huge rhinoceros in the background in the garden. Very, very bizarre, quite beautiful, by Albinus. And And so it goes on, in contemporary art. The rhinoceros hasn't been forgotten, certainly not by South Africa's most famous artist, William Kentridge. There's a large bronze depiction of Dührer's rhinoceros in Marbella, following, I don't know if there was a model made by Salvador Dali or if it was just a suggestion, but it's a Dali-inspired sculpture. Maybe he even made it, but I'm not sure about that. Which features the same very accurate depiction of Dührer's rhinoceros, but with the addition of 2 sea urchins, which is quite surreal. And so I started thinking about doing this rhinoceros and doing research, and it's just fascinating. I've given you this long sort of tale because it sort of ties in with what I wanted to talk about, which is this idea of diving deeper into a subject. The more I found out, the more I simply researched the rhinoceros in art and came across the story of Clara. Clara has inspired some wonderful little short animated films and children's books. She became something of a 18th century celebrity as she was trotted around Europe to gasps of awe and wonderment by the high society folk of 18th century Europe. And to be honest, if you look at a live rhinoceros and are not amazed, astounded, astonished, well, there's no hope for you in my book, because they are fantastic creatures. So I got into this deep dive, and it sort of reminded me of something that I'd been reading about. Cue the yawns or the drum roll, in a recent email newsletter by a chap, Brandon, who has an email about alternative learning philosophies, curriculum and so forth in high schools, based on the educational philosophy of an Irishman, Kieran Egan. He's sadly passed on recently, I think, a couple of years ago. And he had very, very interesting ideas about quite different approaches to how we learn and what we should be learning as children, how schools should be structured, very revolutionary ideas. And in Brandon's email, he spoke about a summer course that he was offering, which tied into an idea that I'd come across back in the day when I was working in Sao Paulo. There we had the not very modern and enlightened system of Saturday morning detentions, and as a pastoral person I was compelled to host these. And one day, while I was sitting in the room, bored out of my mind, watching these children suffer for whatever they might have done, grave infractions or not so much, there was an article, an educational article on the desk which I read about a fascinating idea. Perhaps I've spoken about it on this channel before, but the idea was to take some of Egan's educational philosophy and actually implement it in real schools. And one of the ideas was that you would be part at the very beginning of your educational life, sort of 6 or whatever, you would draw out a hat in some sort of ceremony, a noun. It might be butterflies or tomatoes. It certainly wasn't something that you chose. And then that word would be the theme for a year-long project for the rest of your school career. And it sounds ridiculous, but as the article spoke about how this would unfold, and obviously the words would need to be, in a sense, neutral but very open-ended. The colour blue, or, as I say, tomatoes or butterflies. And really, whatever your interests as a person, these sort of words, you could eventually build something around it and link it into your learning. And it's a fascinating idea. And Brandon of the, I don't know what his newsletter's called, Lost Tools of Education or whatever, something strange. He suggests this for adults, that you go on this course where he kind of talks about how you go about this sort of learning process. And you spend a summer where you really dive into a topic. And it doesn't have to be, in fact, it seems to me almost it's preferable that it isn't something that you are immediately drawn to. It is just a random thing that you start researching and you kind of follow leads and you open it out and you link it into other things that you know or activities that you like doing. And you go from there. But you're forced to really mine deeply the subject matter. And of course, it's very easy to do that now, because with the internet, there is an almost infinite supply of information. The rhinoceros in art, well, it's a thing. And when you start digging into it, and as ideas kind of start flowing, and as I come across other images and they sort of start sparking off things, magic happens. Serendipitous magic. And anyone who knows me well knows that that is a word I'm particularly fond of. What a wonderful stimulus for our own sort of curiosity. And the learning that takes place is learning that is completely unconstrained by a final result, because at the very beginning you have no idea where you're going or where it might lead, what the outcomes might be. And it strikes me that this would be a fantastic thing for everybody to do. If you want to get in touch with your inner child, the natural learner that I think is all of us, then kind of energizing your sense of curiosity and wonder is a very good way to do that. So that's what I'm doing with my rhinoceros project, and I really don't know where it's going to go, but it will be somewhere, I think, very, very interesting, and I will keep you posted. So that's it for this week. As always, be fascinated to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below, and as always, trust your lives are filled with joy. And I'm not going to say from a sunny Brazil, but from a late afternoon, balmy Brazil,